The Great Hall was older than human civilization. Its walls stretched up into darkness, carved from stone that had seen 1,000 species rise and fall. Light came from floating orbs that drifted like lazy fireflies, casting soft shadows across the faces of beings that had lived for thousands of years. Ambassador Una Park stood at the entrance and felt very small. She was 42 years old. In human terms, she was experienced and wise. But here in the hall of the Galactic Concord, she was a child. The youngest species in the room, the newest voice in a conversation that had been going on for millions of years. "They're watching us," Captain Taiho Kwan whispered beside her. He was a tall man with a scar running down his left cheek, a gift from the Outer Belt conflict 10 years ago. His eyes moved constantly, checking exits, counting guards, measuring threats. Old habits never died. "Let them watch," Una said quietly. "That's why we're here." Behind them, Dr. Minji Song clutched her translation device like a shield. She was the youngest member of their small delegation, barely 30 years old. Her job was to listen and understand. Right now, she was doing a lot of listening. The hall was filled with aliens. The Vreth sat in the highest seats, their insect-like bodies clicking and shifting. They had 6 arms and eyes that saw in spectrums humans couldn't imagine. They were the oldest race here, founders of the Concord, judges of civilizations. Below them sat the monoliths, beings of living stone that moved like slow mountains. They spoke through vibrations in the floor. Their voices felt more than heard. The eternal choir floated in glass containers filled with strange light. They were energy beings, thoughts without bodies, ancient beyond measure. And there were others. So many others. 12 elder races in total, each one older than humanity's entire history on Earth. They all looked at the 3 humans with the same expression, contempt. "The brief ones arrive," announced a Vreth official. His voice was like dry leaves scraping together. "Let the summons be read." Una walked forward. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. She could feel the weight of alien eyes on her back, judging her, measuring her. Finding her small and weak and temporary, humans lived maybe 80 or 90 years. The Vreth lived for 50,000. To them, humans were mayflies, creatures that flickered into existence and vanished before anyone could. "Remember their names?" She reached the speaking platform and stood straight. "We are here," she said simply. "Hi, Arbiter." Thiessen rose from his seat. He was ancient even by Vreth standards. His shell faded to pale gray, his movements slow but certain. He had judged civilizations for 40,000 years. He had watched species grow and die. He had seen empires born and empires burn. To him, humanity was barely a footnote. "Humanity stands accused," Thiessen said. His voice filled the hall without effort. 3 cycles ago, human warships entered the Forbidden Corridor. This is a violation of Concord law. This is a crime against the sacred trust. No species has broken this law and survived. Murmurs rippled through the hall. The monoliths rumbled. The eternal choir pulsed with agitated light. Una kept her face calm. Inside, her heart was beating fast. The Forbidden Corridor. She had heard of it, of course. Every spacefaring species knew about it. A region of space that was sealed off, declared untouchable, forbidden for 2 million years. No one went there. No one asked why. It was simply the law. Until 3 months ago, when a human fleet had done exactly that. The problem was, Una didn't know the full story. Earth Command had kept the details classified. She had been told only what she needed to know. Humanity had broken the law, and now she had to answer for it. "Do you deny these charges?" Thiessen asked. Una opened her mouth to respond, and then her communication device buzzed quietly against her wrist. A message, encrypted. From Earth, she glanced down, just for a second. The message was short. "Tell them nothing." "We knew before they did." She looked back up at Thiessen. At the 12 elder races, at the millions of years of history staring down at her with cold judgment. "I request time to prepare our response," she said. 1 cycle. Thisan's eyes narrowed. You ask for delay? I ask for fairness, Yuna replied. Surely the Concord believes in fairness. Silence stretched. Then Thisan nodded slowly. One cycle. No more. Yuna bowed her head in thanks and turned away. She walked back to her team, keeping her pace steady, her face blank. But Taiho saw something in her eyes. He had known her for 15 years. He could read her better than any alien could. Something's wrong, he said quietly. Something's very wrong, Yuna agreed. We need to talk privately. They left the great hall through a side passage. The guards let them go without trouble. Where would they run? They were light years from Earth, surrounded by species that could crush humanity like an insect. In their small quarters, Yuna finally let her mask fall. They're afraid, she said. Minji looked up. What? The elder races? I saw it in their faces. They're not angry with us. They're afraid. Taiho crossed his arms. Afraid of what? We're the youngest species in the galaxy. We've been in space for 80 years. They've been here for millions. I don't know, Yuna admitted. But Earth Command sent me a message. They said they knew something before the Concord did. They told me to say nothing. So what do we do? Minji asked. Yuna looked out the small window. Stars filled the darkness, cold and ancient and endless. We find out what really happened in that corridor, she said. We find out what our fleet did. And we find out why the oldest civilizations in the galaxy are scared of humans. Taiho moved to stand beside her. Outside, alien ships drifted past like massive whales swimming through the void. I've noticed something else, he said. The Vreth guards. Their weapons aren't pointed at us. No. No, they're pointed outward. Toward the corridor. Like they're expecting something to come from there. Yuna felt a chill run down her spine. What had humanity found in that forbidden place? What had they done? And why did she have the feeling that the real enemy wasn't in this hall at all? The stars offered no answers. They just kept burning, cold and silent. Keeping their secrets like they always had. Tomorrow, Yuna would face the Concord again. Tomorrow, she would have to speak for all of humanity. She just hoped she would know. What to say? The Great Hall was even more crowded than before. Word had spread across the galaxy. Billions of beings watched through quantum broadcasts. Their eyes and sensors fixed on the small human woman who stood alone on the speaking platform. Yuna had not slept. She had spent the night reading files, watching recordings, learning truths that made her hands shake. Now she understood why. Earth Command had told her to say nothing. Now she understood why the elder races were afraid. High Arbiter, Thisan rose from his ancient seat. His shell caught the light from the floating orbs, turning him into a statue of judgment. The time has come, he announced. Humanity will answer for its crimes. Ambassador, you may speak. Yuna looked around the hall. She saw the Vreth clicking with anticipation. She saw the monoliths rumbling like distant thunder. She saw the eternal choir pulsing with cold, harsh light. They expected her to beg. They expected her to make excuses. They expected her to grovel and plead for mercy like all the young species before. Her? She did none of those things. Humanity does not deny thee. Charges, she said. The hall went silent. Entered the forbidden corridor, Yuna continued. We did not ask permission. We did not send warnings. We acted because we had to, and we would do it again. For a moment, nothing moved. Then the hall exploded. The Vreth clicked and screamed in outrage. The monoliths shook the floor with their fury. The eternal choir blazed so bright that humans would have gone blind looking at them. Silence. Thisan's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. The noise died away, but the anger remained thick and hot in the air. You admit to violating our most sacred law, Thisan said. You admit to breaking a trust that has stood for 2 million years? And you say you would do it again? Yes, Yuna said simply. Then humanity has chosen its fate. You will be before you finish that sentence, Yuna interrupted. You should know what we found there. And what we destroyed before it could destroy you. Asen stopped. His ancient eyes narrowed. Explain. Yuna raised her hand. Behind her, a holographic screen flickered to life. The image that appeared made several alien species gasp. It was Admiral Sunwoo Beak, commander of Earth's defense forces. He was an old man with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. He stood on the bridge of a warship, but the ship around him was damaged, burned, barely holding together. "This message was recorded 3 months ago," Yuna said. Inside the forbidden corridor, Admiral Sunwoo's voice filled the hall. "This is Admiral Beak of the Earth's Defense Fleet. We have engaged the enemy." "Repeat! We have engaged the enemy. The seals have failed. The sleepers are waking. All ships focus fire on the central chamber. We have to destroy them before they fully wake, whatever the cost." The recording shifted. Now it showed space battle footage. Human ships, small and fragile compared to the massive vessels of the elder races, diving towards something enormous. Something dark. Something that looked like a living nightmare made of metal and shadow. The thing was the size of a moon. It had no clear shape, just endless tendrils and surfaces that seemed to move and shift. Like a creature waking from a long dream, the human ships fired everything they had. Missiles, energy weapons, nuclear, warheads. The darkness burned, but it fought back. Tendrils lashed out, grabbing ships, crushing them, absorbing them. One by one, the human vessels died. But they kept fighting. The recording ended with a final explosion. A flash of light so bright it whited out the screen. Then silence. Yuna turned back to the hall. The elder races were no longer angry. They were pale, shaking. Some of them looked like they wanted to run. 35 ships went into that corridor, Yuna said. 12 came back. Over 12,000 humans died. But they destroyed the awakening chamber. They stopped what was coming. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. They stopped the sleepers. High Arbiter Thiessen made a sound that Minji's translator couldn't process. It was old, primal, a sound of pure fear. Then he spoke a word in his native tongue. A word that hadn't been spoken in a million years. Minji's device translated it. The sleepers. "You know what they are?" Yuna said. It wasn't a question. Thiessen was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Older, tired. "The sleepers were our greatest enemy," he said. 2 million years ago, they nearly destroyed everything. Every species, every world. They were parasites. They infiltrated networks, turned technology against its creators, consumed civilizations from within. "And you stopped them," Yuna said. "No, we couldn't stop them. We could only contain them. We sealed them in the corridor. We locked the door and hoped it would hold forever. But you knew it wouldn't." Thiessen's silence was answer enough. "You knew the seals were failing," Yuna continued. "You knew the sleepers were waking. And you did nothing. You just waited, hoping the problem would go away. Hoping someone else would deal with it." "We thought we had more time," another elder voice said. One of the monoliths speaking for the first time. "We thought the younger races would never know." "You thought wrong." Yuna stepped forward, her small human form somehow commanding the attention of every being in that ancient hall. 6 months ago, one of our intelligence analysts intercepted a signal from the corridor. A countdown. He decoded it using fragments from dead civilizations' archives. Archives you thought were lost. He discovered what you had hidden. He discovered the truth. She looked at Thiessen directly. "You forgot about the sleepers? You erased the records. You pretended the threat didn't exist. But humans don't forget. We remember. We have a saying on Earth. We never forgive and we never forget." The hall was completely silent. "Our people died in that corridor," Yuna said. "They died fighting an enemy you created and abandoned. They died saving a galaxy that calls them children and treats them like insects." She took a breath. "So when you judge us for breaking your law, remember this. While you were sleeping, we were fighting. While you were hiding, we were dying. We didn't ask for permission because there was no time. We didn't warn you because you would have stopped us. And we would do it again because that's what humans do. We don't run from the darkness. We run toward it. She turned and walked back to her team. The elder races watched her go, and for the first time in 2 million years, they looked at humanity with something other than contempt. They looked at them with fear, and beneath the fear, growing slowly like a seed in dark soil, was something else. Respect. Tejo met her eyes as she approached. He didn't smile, but there was pride in his face. "That was quite a speech," he said quietly. Yuna's hands were shaking. She hid them behind her back. "It's not over yet," she said. "This is just the beginning." Behind them, Thiessen remained standing, staring at the empty space where the human ambassador had stood. For 40,000 years, he had judged the young races. He had found them wanting. He had watched them grovel and beg and break, but not this one. Not humanity for the first time in longer than he could remember. High Arbiter Thiessen didn't know what would happen next, and that terrified him more than anything. 6 months before the trial, on a quiet night in Seoul, a young man named Junho Shin sat alone in a dark room filled with computer screens. He was 28 years old, an intelligence analyst for Earth Command. His job was to listen to the void, to catch the whispers that traveled between stars, to find patterns in the endless noise of the galaxy. Most nights, he found nothing. But tonight was different. A signal had appeared on his screen. It was faint, barely there, like a heartbeat from something very far away. It came from the direction of the Forbidden Corridor, a place no one was supposed to look at, a place everyone had agreed to ignore. JUNHO should have reported it and moved on. That was protocol. That was the safe thing to do. Instead, he leaned closer and started to decode it. It took him 3 days without sleep. He pulled fragments from old archives, dead languages from civilizations that had vanished thousands of years ago. He cross-referenced patterns, built translation algorithms, worked until his eyes burned and his hands cramped, and when he finally understood the message, his blood went cold. It was a countdown. Something was waking up. Something old. Something terrible. And according to the numbers on his screen, it would be fully awake in less than 4 months. JUNHO ran to his commander's office. He burst through the door without knocking. "Sir," he said, "we have a problem." 2 weeks later, Commander Dai Lim stood on the bridge of the battleship, Resolve, and looked at the 46 ships under her command. She was 39 years old. A small woman with short black hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had fought in 3 wars and won all of them. But this mission was different from anything she had ever done. They were going into the Forbidden Corridor. They were going to find whatever was waking up there, and they were going to destroy it. "All ships report ready," her first officer said. Dodd nodded slowly. She thought about her daughter back on Earth, just 9 years old. She's probably sleeping right now in her small bed with her stuffed tiger. She thought about her husband, who had cried when she told him about the mission, but hadn't asked her to stay, he knew. They both knew. Some things were more important than coming home. "Take us in," DA said. The fleet moved forward. The stars around them seemed to grow darker as they crossed the boundary into forbidden space. Sensors flickered and struggled. Something in this region didn't want to be seen. For 3 days, they traveled deeper into the void. On the 4th day, found it. The thing was massive beyond human understanding. It floated in the darkness like a sleeping god, its surface shifting and rippling with patterns that hurt to look at. It was made of metal and something else, something organic, something that had been growing and evolving in the darkness for 2 million years. My God, someone whispered on the bridge. Da didn't waste time on fear. "All ships. Battle formation," she ordered. "Target the central mass. Fire on my command." The thing began to stir. Tendrils the size of mountains unfolded from its body. Lights flickered across its surface like neurons firing in a waking brain. It was waking up. It was waking up right now. Fire. Da shouted. 40-7 ships opened up with everything they had. The void lit up with missiles and energy beams and nuclear fire. The first explosions hit the creature's surface and tore open wounds that burned with strange light, but the thing fought back. Tendrils lashed out faster than anything that big should move. The first ship to die was the Courage. The tendril wrapped around it and crushed it like paper. The second ship was the Dawn, torn in half before anyone could scream. Da watched her people die and kept giving orders. Focus fire on the central chamber. Don't stop. Whatever happens, don't stop. The creature was fully awake now. It screamed without sound, a psychic howl that made half her crew fall to their knees, clutching their heads. But the humans kept fighting. They flew their ships into the monster's wounds, detonating reactors at point-blank range. One by one, the ships fell. 30 left. Then 20. Then 10. Da's own ship shook as a tendril grazed its hull. Alarms screamed. Fire broke out on 3 decks. Something hit her from behind, and she felt her left arm snap like a dry branch. She didn't stop. She couldn't stop. All remaining ships, she gasped into her communicator, rammed the central chamber. This is a direct order. Everything we have. Now. The last human ships dove toward the creature's heart like arrows made of fire and steel. They broke through the surface, buried themselves deep, and detonated. The explosion was brighter than a star. Dodd's ship tumbled away from the blast. Burning, broken, barely alive. She lay on the floor of her bridge, surrounded by the bodies of her crew. Watching through cracked windows as the creature came apart, it wasn't dead. She could feel it somehow, at the edge of her mind. It wasn't completely dead, but it was broken. Its awakening chamber was destroyed. It would take thousands of years to rebuild, maybe millions, and by then, the galaxy would be ready. 12 ships limped out of the forbidden corridor. 35 did not. Over 12,000 humans never came home now. In the Great Hall of the Galactic Concord, Ambassador Yuna played the recordings for the elder races. She showed them the battle. She showed them the sacrifice. She showed them what humanity had done while they were busy forgetting. Commander Da was there too. She had been brought from Earth for the trial, still recovering from her wounds. Her left arm was gone now, replaced with a simple prosthetic. Her face was thin and tired, but her eyes were still sharp. "This is Commander Da Lim," Yuna announced. She led the mission int. "Oh, the corridor. She destroyed your forgotten enemy. She lost most of her crew doing it." Da stepped forward. The elder races watched her, this small, broken human woman who had done what they were too afraid to do. "I have the neural recordings from my fallen crew," Da said. Her voice was quiet but steady. "Every moment of the battle, every death, every sacrifice. If anyone doubts what we did, I will show them exactly what it cost." No one asked to see the recordings. No one doubted. High Arbiter Thiessen looked at Dai for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "Why?" he asked. "You knew you would die. Most of you did die. Why did you fight?" Da thought about the question. She thought about her daughter, about her husband, about the blue planet she had grown up on. "Because someone had to," she said simply. "You chose to forget. We chose to remember. You chose to hide. We chose to fight. That's the difference between us. We don't live very long. We don't have thousands of years to wait and hope. So we act. We fight. We die if we have to. But we never, ever run away." She looked directly at Thiessen, meeting his ancient eyes without fear. "Your ancestors locked that thing away and hoped it would stay asleep forever. My crew went in there and killed it. You called us the brief ones, but our brief lives burned bright enough to save your galaxy." She turned and walked back to stand with Yuna. The hall was silent. The elder races sat in their ancient seats, surrounded by their millions of years of history, and they had nothing to say. They had forgotten. Humanity had remembered. They had hidden. Humanity had fought. For 2 million years, the elder races had believed they were the guardians of the galaxy. But when the real threat came, it was the youngest species, the briefest species, that had stood in the fire and refused to burn. Maybe, just maybe, they had been wrong about humanity all along. The revelation changed everything in the days that followed. The Galactic Concord fell into chaos. Species that had trusted each other for millions of years now looked at each other with doubt and fear. Questions flew through the halls like angry birds. Why had this been hidden? Who knew? Who decided to forget? Yuna and her team watched from their small quarters as the elder races tore themselves apart. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like watching a family break. "They're scared," Minji said quietly, looking out the window at the alien ships moving in confused patterns around the station. "They've never had to question themselves before," Good Taiho said. There was no sympathy in his voice. Maybe they'll finally learn something. But Yuna wasn't so sure. Fear could make people wise. It could also make them dangerous. On the third night after the revelation, a junior diplomat named Hannah Choi came to their quarters. She was young, only 25, with nervous eyes and hands that wouldn't stop moving. "Ambassador," she said, "I found something. Something bad." Hannah had been assigned to monitor alien communications during the trial. It was boring work, mostly listening to diplomatic chatter and ceremonial speeches. But she was good at patterns. She noticed things other people missed. "Some of the elder races have been talking in encrypted channels," she explained, spreading data files across the table. "I managed to decode a few of them." "Ambassador," they knew. Not all of them, but some. A group of them knew the seals were failing years ago. Yuna felt her stomach drop. "Show me." The files told a terrible story. A faction among the elder races had known about the failing seals for decades. They had done the math. They had calculated when the sleepers would wake and which sectors would be hit first. The younger races would die first. Humanity, the Vesk, the Crystal Singers. All the species that were too new, too weak, too brief to matter. The elder races would have time to run. They had already started building ships to flee to another galaxy. They had planned to let the young species be consumed while they escaped. Humanity had not just saved the galaxy. They had accidentally ruined an escape plan that would have sacrificed billions. "They were going to let us die," Hannah whispered. "They were going to watch us burn and run away." Yuna sat down heavily. She had thought she understood the elder races. She had thought they were simply old and tired, guilty of forgetting rather than planning. But this was something else. This was betrayal. "We need to tell the Concord," she said finally. "They'll deny it," Taiho warned. "They'll say, 'We made it up.' Maybe, but the truth has a way of coming out. Especially when you shine a light on it." The next day, Yuna stood before the Concord again. But this time, she wasn't defending humanity. She was attacking. "We have discovered evidence of a conspiracy," she announced. Her voice was calm, but her words hit like bombs. A group among the elder races knew the sleepers were waking. They had a plan. They were going to flee to another galaxy and leave the younger races to be destroyed. The hall erupted. Denials, accusations, rage. But Yuna had the communications. She had the flight plans for the escape ships. She had names. 3 elder races were implicated. The Vreth were not among them, but others were. Species that had sat in judgment of humanity just days ago now stood accused of planning genocide through neglect. High Arbiter, Thiessen looked at the evidence. His ancient face showed no emotion, but Yuna could see something breaking behind his eyes. The Concord he had served for 40,000 years was not what he thought it was. "Is this true?" he asked the accused races. They said nothing. Their silence was answer enough. "You plan to abandon us," one of the younger alien species said. "You plan to let us die? We plan to survive," one of the accused finally replied. "The sleepers cannot be stopped. They can only be delayed. We bought ourselves time. That is all anyone can do." "No," Yuna said. "That's not all anyone can do. Humanity didn't buy time. Humanity fought. Humanity won. You were lucky," the accused one spat. "The sleepers were still waking. If they had been fully awake, your little fleet would have been nothing." "Maybe, but we didn't run. We didn't sacrifice others to save ourselves. We looked at the darkness and charged straight into it. That's the difference between us." The conspirators were removed from the Concord. Their ships were seized. Their escape plan was destroyed, but the damage was done. Trust between species had been shattered. The perfect order of the galaxy was broken. That night, Una sat alone in her quarters, staring at the stars. She should have felt proud. Humanity had exposed corruption. Humanity had won. Instead, she just felt tired. A soft knock came at her door. When she opened it, she found a being she had never seen before. It was tall and thin, wrapped in robes that seemed to be made of shadow. Its face was hidden, but she could feel its eyes watching her. "May I enter?" it asked. Its voice was like wind through ancient trees. "Who are you?" "I am called the Watcher. I have observed your species since you first left your planet." Una let it in. She didn't know why. Something told her this was important. "I was the one who helped your analyst find the countdown signal," the Watcher said, settling into a chair that seemed too small for it. "I guided him to the right archives. I hoped he would understand what he found." "Why?" "Because I have watched 1,000 species face the darkness. They all react the same way. They hide, they run, they sacrifice others to save themselves. But your species is different. I wanted to see if you would fight, and if we had lost." The Watcher was silent for a moment. "Then I would have been wrong about you." "But I wasn't. You charged into the fire. You died by the thousands. And you won." Una thought about Commander Dodge, about the 35 ships that never came home, about the 12,000 names that would be carved into memorial stones. "We almost didn't," she said quietly. "We almost failed. Almost is not failure. Almost is courage. Your people looked at impossible odds and said, 'We will try anyway.' Do you know how rare that is? Do you know how precious?" The Watcher leaned forward. "I have lived for longer than your species has existed. I have seen empires rise and fall, and I tell you this, humanity is something new, something the galaxy has never seen before. You are brief, yes, but your brevity makes you burn brighter than any star. You don't wait for tomorrow because you might not have a tomorrow. You act, you fight. You love fiercely because you know it won't last forever. It stood to leave. The galaxy will never be the same after this. The old order is broken. Something new will have to be built, and I think your species will be the ones to build it." "Why are you telling me this?" The Watcher paused at the door. "Because I want you to understand. What happened in that corridor wasn't luck. It wasn't desperation. It was humanity being exactly what humanity is. The galaxy needed heroes, and you didn't hesitate. Remember that in the days ahead, remember what your people are capable of." And it was gone. Leaving Una alone with the stars again, she sat for a long time, thinking about heroes and sacrifice and what it meant to be human in a galaxy that had tried so hard to make them small. Tomorrow, there would be more trials, more revelations, more chaos. But tonight, she allowed herself a small moment of hope. Humanity had proven something. They had proven that the universe was not just a place for the old and powerful. It was a place for the brave, for the stubborn, for the ones who refused to give up no matter how dark things got. The elder races had forgotten how to hope. Maybe humanity could remind them. 1 year had passed since the trial that shook the galaxy. On Luna, Earth's moon, thousands of people gathered under a glass dome that showed the stars. They stood in silence, looking at a wall of names carved into black stone. 12,047 names. The crew of 35 ships who flew into the darkness and never came. Commander Da Lim stood at the front of the crowd, her prosthetic arm gleaming silver in the starlight. She wore her dress uniform, medals covering her chest, but none of them mattered as much as the simple patch on her shoulder, a black circle with a single flame. Burning inside it, the symbol of the corridor mission, the symbol of humanity's sacrifice. "They knew they might not return," Da said, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. "But they went anyway. Not because they wanted to be heroes. Not because they wanted glory. They went because someone had to. They went because that's what humans do." She touched the wall, her fingers tracing a name. Kim Taiwan. Her first officer. He had been 29 years old. He had a wife and a son who would grow up without knowing his father's face. "We remember them," Da continued. "Not as legends, not as symbols, We remember them as people, as friends, as family, and we promise them this: their sacrifice will not be forgotten. Their courage will not be wasted. As long as humanity exists, we will stand against the darkness. We will never run. We will never hide.
Oh.
She stepped back, and the crowd began to move forward, each person touching the wall, saying goodbye to those they had lost, far above them in orbit around Earth. Captain Tai-Ho Kwan looked down at the ceremony through the windows of his new ship. He was Admiral Tai-Ho now, commander of the First Joint. Fleet that included ships from humanity and 6 other species, they patrolled the edge of the Forbidden Corridor, watching for signs that the sleepers might stir again. So far, everything had been quiet. The enemy was broken, dormant, maybe dead. But Tai-Ho didn't trust quiet. He had learned long ago that the universe liked to surprise you when you least expected it. Admiral, his first officer, said, "Incoming transmission from the Concorde." Tai-Ho turned, put it through. Ambassador Una Park appeared on his screen. She looked different now, more confident, more settled. A year of rebuilding the galaxy had changed her, made her stronger. "Admiral," she said with a small smile, just checking in. "How's the view out there?" "Dark and cold as usual." "How's the Concorde?" "Loud and complicated, as usual, but we're making progress." The new charter was signed yesterday. Every species gets an equal voice now. No more secrets. No more hidden threats. Tai-Ho nodded. It was good news, even if he knew that changing laws was easier than changing minds. Some of the elder races still looked at humans with suspicion. Some still resented being saved by a species they had dismissed as children. But things were different now. Humanity had a seat at the highest table. Una had been named first speaker, the most important diplomatic position in the galaxy. When she spoke, everyone listened. "Tell me something," Tai-Ho said. "Do you think they'll ever really accept us?" Una thought for a moment. Some will. Some won't. But acceptance isn't the goal anymore. Respect is, and we've earned that. Every species in the galaxy knows what we did in that corridor. They know we didn't run. Is that enough? It's a start. The rest we'll figure out as we go. On Earth, in a small office in Seoul, analyst Junho Shin was no longer young and no longer unknown. He ran the new Galactic Early Warning Network, a system that monitored threats across thousands of light years. His methods, once considered strange and obsessive, were now standard practice. He had saved the galaxy with a computer and a refusal to give up. Now he trained others to do the same. Young analysts from a dozen species sat in his lectures, learning to read the void, to find patterns in chaos, to listen for danger before it arrived. "The universe is full of secrets," he told them. "Some are beautiful. Some are deadly. Your job is to find them before they find us. Don't assume anything is safe, because no one is looking at it. The sleepers were hidden for 2 million years, and we found them because one analyst refused to ignore a strange signal. One person. That's all it takes." In the Great Hall of the Galactic Concorde, High Arbiter Thiessen stood before the assembly for what would be his last address. He was stepping down after 40,000 years of service. It was time for younger voices to lead. "I have judged 1,000 species," he said. "I have watched civilizations rise and fall. I thought I understood what made a species great. Age, wisdom, power, but I was wrong." He looked at the human delegation in the audience. Una sat there with her team, listening quietly. "Humanity taught me something. Greatness is not about how long you live. It's about what you do with the time you have. The brief ones, we called them. We thought their short lives made them weak, but their brevity makes them brave. They don't waste time on fear. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They act. They fight. They die for each other." He bowed his ancient head. "I was wrong to judge them. We were all wrong. And I hope the next generation of leaders will remember, the smallest flame can hold back the greatest darkness." The Watcher appeared one more time. It came to Earth. Walking among humans for the first time in its endless existence, it walked through crowded streets, past busy shops, through parks where children played. It watched a young woman help an old man carry his groceries. It watched a firefighter run into a burning building to save a stranger. It watched a doctor work through the night to save a patient she had never met. Small moments, brief kindnesses. The everyday courage of ordinary people. The Watcher had lived for millions of years. It had seen empires that spanned galaxies. It had watched gods rise and fall, but it had never seen anything like humanity. They were brief, yes. Their lives flickered like candle flames in an endless wind. But in their brevity, they burned with a light that nothing could match. They loved fiercely because they knew it wouldn't last. They fought desperately because they knew tomorrow was not promised. They helped strangers because they understood that everyone was just trying to survive. The Watcher finally understood why humanity had charged into the corridor, why they had died by the thousands to save a galaxy that had never respected them. It wasn't about glory. It wasn't about proving themselves. It was about love. Humanity loved life, loved existence, loved the universe in all its beauty and terror. And when that love was threatened, they didn't hesitate. They stood up. They fought back. The galaxy had needed heroes, and humanity had answered without being asked. On the anniversary of the Corridor mission, Una stood before the assembled species of the Concord and delivered a simple message. The galaxy feared us because we struck without warning, she said. But understand this, we didn't strike first because we wanted war. We struck first because no one else would. We struck first because someone had to. And if the darkness rises again, from the corridor, from the void, from anywhere, humanity will strike first again. She paused, looking at the gathered faces of 100 different species. Not because we are warriors, because we are human. And humans protect their own. All life is our own. All hope is our own. All courage is our own. Silence filled the hall. Then, one by one, the elder races stood. Not in judgment this time. Not in suspicion. In respect. The story of the Corridor mission spread across the galaxy and became legend. It was told on 1,000 worlds in 1,000 languages. The tale of the young species that charged into the darkness when the old species ran away. The tale of the brief ones who proved that a short life, lived with courage and love, was worth more than an eternity of fear, and somewhere in the endless void beyond the stars. Something stirred in its broken sleep. But this time, humanity was watching. This time, humanity was ready. The galaxy had guardians now. Real guardians. Not perfect beings who lived forever and forgot how to hope. Just ordinary people with ordinary lives who refused to give up. The brief ones. The ones who ran toward the fire. The ones who never forgot. Humanity.